I'm that kind of millennial that loves classic things. Even as a guy who's 26, I love the classic cars, the classic house designs, brick, stone, log cabins. I just love classic things. I also love modern things, and I love modern materials and modern things being used in kind of classic design. So I love kind of when the two worlds mesh to create kind of a perfect situation, a best of both worlds. So the knife we're going to talk about today is kind of one of those knives. It's a knife that has the best of both worlds. And the knife we're talking about today is the Cold Steel Wild West Bowie. Look at that thing. All right, so this is my first fixed blade knife review. I have a few fixed blades. I have quite a few fixed blades, and I will be reviewing them on this channel. I just started out with folding knives because, those are the knives that I carry every day, and, everyone will carry. I do occasionally carry a small fixed blade. But we are talking about this Cold Steel Wild West Bowie. So let's get into the specs. Cold Steel Wild West Bowie. It's made of 1090 high carbon steel. For some reason, I heard it was 1080 at some point. Right now, Cold Steel has posted 1090. It's close either way, not all that far off. It's a 4.75 millimeters thick. The blade is 10 3/4 inches. The handle is 5 1/4 inches. Overall, it's a 16-inch knife. It's weighing at 23 ounces. That's what Cold Steel has on their website. I'm not sure if that includes the sheath or not. Either way, it's not a light knife, but it is a big Bowie knife. So, of course, you're not going to get a light knife. And the handles are, you can kind of see that. That's a rosewood. Pretty handles. So, anyway, we're going to get into what I like, what I don't like, and something unique about the knife. So, let's start. First of all, I like this knife. It feels classy. It is a classy feeling knife. It feels like a classic Bowie knife with that S-guard made of brass, this handle. I don't know what that's called. It's on the butt of the handle. It's on the pommel. But, that loop really locks you in so you can come down right here. And when you want to swing it, get a little bit more leverage. And it even has a lanyard hole. So that's nice if you want to, use this for hard use. So yeah, it looks like a classy knife. It feels like a classy knife. And so I really like that. Like I said, I like classy stuff, but with modern materials. The blade design, it's a clip point Bowie knife. It is, it's the Jim Bowie style. You cannot go wrong with that clip point Bowie knife. And another thing I do like about this knife is, the tip, it's not overly thin. A lot of Bowie knives, Ontario makes a Bowie knife, and the tip is incredibly thin. I've seen a lot of super thin tips on Bowie knives. This tip is not super stout, but it's not also that thin to where you'd be worrying about it chipping or bending on you. So I like this blade design. I really do. It's not overly thick either. You're looking at 4.75 millimeters. So that is I think a really good balance between thickness and durability. It's not gonna crack on you. It's not gonna bend on you because it's too fragile either. The 1090 steel seems to hold up well. It seems to perform just like 1095. It's essentially the same steel when we're talking about realistic performance. And 1095 is a tried and proven steel. You guys know 1095 will rust, so keep it oiled, especially a bright and shiny blade with no coating like this. This will rust, and even right here, probably can't see it because of that glare, but that tang has rusted too. So you want to keep it oiled, just like any carbon steel. That's the nature of the beast. Sorry. The camera's going to kind of be picking up different things because, again, you see that this knife is very shiny, and the camera needs to kind of pick up certain ratios of light. So anyway, that's going to be something we'll have to deal with throughout this review. Another thing I really like about this is the handle is incredibly comfortable. I mentioned that lip right there that you can really grab, but I've mentioned I have XL hands. I have really short, stubby, and thick fingers. So, I have to have a lot of width on a handle to grasp it comfortably. And you guys can see that I have plenty of room. That's something I worry a lot about when I get a fixed blade, when I get a folder, is if my hand can comfortably fit, because I've had knives, the old Cold Steel Voyager series, not old, the newer ones, but when they had the medium size out, my hand couldn't fit in that knife. It was too small. So anyway, that's something that's very important to me because you want to be comfortable holding a knife. So it has plenty of room on there. Also, another thing I really like about this is, I've done a lot with this knife, and I'll kind of talk about that in a little while, but everything has remained very solid. The handle scales are not loosened at all. I have an Ontario Bushcrafter. It's a great knife, but the moment I started using it, those screws came loose. I had to Loctite them with, stronger and bigger screws. But everything has stayed very tight. The guard, no movement whatsoever. So I really like the design, the handle, the blade. A lot about this. There's a lot to like when it comes to this Cold Steel Wild West Bowie. I'm so sorry for that glare. That is rough. We'll get that taken care of here soon, hopefully. Anyway. Last thing I want to talk about in the what I like category is going to be the sheath. I've heard some complaints about the sheath, but really I've enjoyed it so far. I have not carried it a ton just because most of the work I do with this is going to be, at a campsite or in the backyard, around the fire, and I'm not going to be carrying this around. This knife is just for me. It's too big to take around. So I think the stitching overall seems pretty well done. The leather is relatively thin, but it seems to be holding up so far. And for what I would use it for how I would carry it, which was just be in a pack. If I'm going out to do camping, I'll bring, a big blade like this to process firewood, to baton. I'll bring a medium-sized knife, like a K-bar style or an SRK, anything like that. And then I might bring a small folder for fine detail stuff. But, I'd throw this in a pack, and it seems to hold up just fine for that. So I do like the sheath. Now, I haven't carried it on my belt. Maybe it doesn't hold up well beyond that point. So some people can let me know if they've experienced that with their Cold Steel Wild West Bowies. Anyway, let's get into what I don't like. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is a function of old school Bowie knives, if this is just how they have been made, but you guys can kind of see that on camera. You see the edge, and the edge kind of goes down and goes down and goes down. And when you get to, let's say about right here, that's not really an edge. I can press my finger really, really, really hard on that right there, and that is not what I would call an edge. I don't like that. I don't know if that's a function of old school Bowie knives. I know I've heard historically that, certain swords, they would have dulled, the lower part of the sword so that you could use it to grasp things. I don't know how that works, but, I don't like that edge is dulled. There's actually just not any edge. It feels like someone was sharpening it and they kind of gave up around right here. Anyway, it just doesn't go all the way down to the choil, and that bugs me. And there's been a couple of Cold Steel knives that the edge, they don't grind the edge down all the way to the choil, and that kind of drives me crazy. Bring the edge all the way down to the choil. That's kind of what it's made for, from what I know anyway. Maybe they did it so you can go up closer right here. That being said, the edge is kind of so high up. If I wanted to do fine detail work, I'd have to start right about here if I wanted some good performance. So, I could probably, sharpen it down and grind it down if I took some time, but it's not something that you want to have to deal with a knife out of the box. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not, because most of the work you're going to be doing with this, if you're using it as an outdoors piece or anything like that, or, if it's a fighting knife, if you're into that kind of stuff, you're going to be doing stuff right up here. And maybe this is good, because this is a fighting knife. That's what Jim Bowie kind of designed it as. Maybe this is good for blocking, for catching other knives. I know that's what this guard is here for. This is to catch other knives. And this would be a formidable knife. I'm not a knife fighter. I think it's a really cool art and a really cool martial art. But, I know that with 10 1/4, 3/4 inches of blade, you got a better fighting chance than you do with a 4-inch knife, especially with that guard. So that's going to be good for, I'm sure, deflecting other blades. And maybe it is not sharpened at the bottom because that's what, it'd be meant for, is catching other knives. But for me, I'm going to use it outdoors, and it's performed really, really well. And most of the work you're going to be doing is going to be up here, chopping, hacking, splitting like that. So it's not the end of the world, but I would prefer it if they brought it down there, because if I do want to do something fine, I kind of have to start up here, and I'd rather not do that. I'd rather be able to start here if I want to. I can bring it's not very comfortable, but I can bring my thumb around this guard, and I can do some fine stuff with it if that was sharpened down there. So, another thing I don't love about this blade, and I'm not sure if you guys have experienced this or not, but So a little bit of history, what I did with this knife. I got this as a gift from a really good friend of mine. He's a great dude. I hope he watches these videos. Kermit, you're a great guy. He's given me a bunch of knives. But anyway, so I got this as a gift. And, you know, the finish, you're probably seeing, man, that finish is kind of rough. What did you do to it? Well, not really anything, to be honest. You know, the finish was rough from the factory, and I believe these are made in India. I'm not exactly sure where Cold Steel has them manufactured, but it was rough and inconsistent and not, you know, it's shiny in the camera because I have light coming directly at me from a window, but it's not great. It's rough. You can tell they used coarse, you know, a coarse sander on it. And for me personally, for kind of a rugged outdoors knife that still does look like a classic knife, it's not the end of the world. But just a little bit more polish on a knife like this, I think would be better, because you're spending about $100 on this knife. I've seen it fluctuate between like 80 and 110. We'll just say kind of a clean 100. For a $100 knife that's, you know, not American made, I think they could, you know, have it polished better, and it would be more appealing to a lot of people, especially those classic. There's people who like to collect classic blades who want them to have modern materials, which is really what this is. So a little bit more polish would be preferred. Again, for me, you know, I'm going to use it outside. It still has that classic Bowie feel, and it still is a good looking knife, even though the polish isn't great, and I can polish it myself. It's not something I want to do. It's the same thing with that edge not coming down to the choil. So another thing I don't love about this knife, again, this is just my personal opinion, and some people might say, well, that's what a Bowie knife is. You know, that's a classic Bowie knife. I get it, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I don't love these belt designs. You know, I know this is kind of that classic ring design with that, you know, that brass ring, and, you know, it kind of hangs, and it does allow it to move freely so it's not stiff on your belt. This is too low. I'm never going to carry this. If it was hung like this, I would carry it then, because it wouldn't hang so low. And I know that's kind of a gripe of the function of the knife, you know, the classic style. It's just how I like them. I don't like a sheath to hang super, super low, because I've carried this on my belt, and after a minute of just walking around, you know, the backyard, getting firewood ready for, a camp out with friends or something, I'm not going to carry it, you know, at all. So, you know, I would love to see a different design. Maybe, is there any way to keep the classic design with making it a little bit more comfortable and functional? I don't know. I'm not a knife maker, but anyway, I don't love that kind of design on the blade. So, lastly, something unique. Not only is this a knife that it looks and feels like an old school Wild West Bowie, you know, it does. It has the rosewood handles, it has the S-guard brass, it has the clip point design. Aside from the polish, you know, it's a good looking blade. It really is, and it performs really well. You know, so you kind of have that classic look. You have the cool looks and everything like that, but with modern materials, with 1090 steel, with, I believe this is stabilized rosewood, with, you know, modern brass, and it's a really, really tight, really, really well put together knife. I've processed wood for probably half a dozen fires with this thing. Nothing's loose. Edge is held really, really well. So it's a knife that has that classic look. It has that classic feel, but with modern materials that still performs. And that is something that is unique, and that is something that is really cool. And at $100, I think it's a reasonable price. So would I recommend it? Yes, $100. I think you're getting a really, really cool looking Bowie design, with great steel. It's held up great. You know, a couple modern advantages like the lanyard hole, and, you know, like modern machining and everything like that. So I think that it is worth the $100 you'll spend, and hopefully Cold Steel is able to get these, you know, polished a little bit better. Anyway, let's see. So lastly, some comparative options. You know, there are a few. Case makes a few. I don't really have any other big Bowie knives. This is kind of my only big Bowie knife at the moment. There's a couple I can mention though. The Ontario Marine Raider Bowie. It's about the same size. It's going to have a rubberized handle. You know, that's going to be more of a tactical looking knife. It's all black. You know, that's more of a, it looks like a soldier knife, though I don't think many soldiers would carry it at its weight. But there are some case Bowies. There's some other cold steel Bowies. Cold Steel makes the Frontier Bowie, which is even longer. It's a huge knife. It looks really cool. I'd love to get my hands on one of those sometime. But there are some other knives. But really, when you're looking at a knife like this with modern materials, but with that classic design, there's not going to be, I think, a whole ton that will be able to perform the way this one does, hold up the way this does, and have the classic looks that it does. So, I'm sure they're out there, and let me know if there are any that kind of come to mind to you guys. But anyway, let me know if you guys own the Cold Steel, the Wild West Bowie. What do you guys think of it? Have your finishes been as rough as this one? And what is your experience with this knife? Anyway, pick one up if you're interested in something like that. It's a great firewood processing tool, and I'm sure it's a deadly knife in a encounter like that. Anyway, like and subscribe. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next review. Bye.